Hey, and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. I want to cover my builds for Module 26 on the Wizard. So here I have my setup for single target damage on the Thaumaturge Paragon. This uses the new perfect weapons plus a bunch of new gear. You'll be able to use a lot of alternatives to it that just have lower item level, like the Serene Hood there, the Wasteland Wanderers. They give the same bonuses, but these are definitely something you want to work towards. So first of all, I'll cover my different setups, and afterwards I'll cover each of the areas and why you'll use what. So with my single target setup, this is the gear I'm using. These are the enchantments with the artifacts. This is the power setup here with the boons. It's going to be the same as all the other loadouts. Same for the companions and the mounts with the stable and the current tab here. Pack tactics, you will switch to like ferocity if a healer or a tank is using that. Ferocity is next to no damage gain, but it's something extra if you don't need the stats. The buffs we are using with that is your Spider's Totem, your Sunlord's Gift Elixir, plus your Flask of Potency, Squash Soup, and your Guild Food, which gives your accuracy, plus an Invocation Blessing, which is also giving me a little bit of accuracy ratings, which puts them nicely at the capped state of green. So we move to our Mirage setup, which is a little bit different, mainly because these weapons don't give us the stats from like the perfect weapons. So we have to make up for that. And the way we do is through the enchantments. We're switching to some amethysts instead of the extra cobalts we had. And the way we get that crit severity back up is using critical burn instead of frigid winds. As for the boons and the companions and the mounts, well, they all stay the same. For our multi-target setup, we have switched the headpiece over to the one from MTOS, which gives you action points upon kills, the ring from the Demon Web Pits with the bonus damage with your multi-target powers, and the enchantments have switched around a little bit, with the powers being these usually. You would have that icy terrain on your spell mastery in order to cast it from a distance, so you aren't as likely to just get wrecked by the enemies having to cast this from like melee range, which you would if it's not in spell mastery. You make sure to get combustive action to get the extra damage against the enemies, getting directed flames to take advantage of the massive damage with glowing flames and arcane singularities, with then the boons remaining the same with companions being adjusted a little bit. You got the phase spider here, plus the Black Dragon Ion Stone, or you could use the new Grump companion coming from the Battle Pass. Right here, he would give critical strike as well. Just a quick note on the primary artifact for AoE, like the Wand of Domination is great, and then you wouldn't have to upgrade any more artifacts than just these, but you could very well either use the Sigil of the Cleric for action point gain regeneration, or the Envenomed Storyteller Journal if you have it. So let's move on to diving into detail on the different sections. So first of all, you have your powers, and in single target, again, this is the general setup. However, there are a few choices here. Like instead of using Swath, you could use Combustive Action if you have enemies to kill in the boss fight, and that way you can get your data power quicker. If somebody is already using Swath in your party, like another wizard, you can use Orb of Imposition for some added damage. Again, if you do not have your crit severity at that 90% like we will with the perfect weapons, then you could use critical burn instead. That way you gain the 10% crit severity and have that capped out. Again, if you have lots of enemies in your boss fight, they need killing, directed flames is better for that area effect damage. You will also cause directed flames to trigger glowing flames on your arcane singularity when it shouldn't really be dealing any damage during its control effect and not just the end effect. As for the powers, the encounters, you want to have Rave Enfeeblement on spell mastery. But again, if you already have another wizard doing that in your party, you would be better off switching to Icy Rays in your spell mastery, plus then your Chill Strike as your third encounter power. And using these, you take advantage of your Shatter Strike, which deals an extra 200 magnitude against that control immune targets. So just be aware of those different situations and what to use and when. It can depend on the content. As an example, if I'm using the Mirage weapons right here, I'm switching over to critical burn to make up for the crit severity loss, since that's more important than having a small damage boost like Frigid Winds. Moving to our AoE powers, you can see this would be our general setup. You have Icy Terrain on your spell mastery so that you can cast it from a distance, and that gives you the benefit of not having to rush up to the enemy group and use it from melee range, and that can get you killed pretty easily in tough content. Then you're using like Fanning the Flames on a tough enemy. You want to aim at the enemy with the most hit points in the pack of enemies so that you don't like just kill it and end the area of effect on it. And then you want to use Conduit of Ice in the same manner, and then Fireball you just use on everything, and it's a big burst in damage using that Icy Terrain in the middle. And if you do have your daily, make sure to position the daily on top of the Icy Terrain so they're all sucked towards the middle of that. An alternative, if the enemies are dying really quickly, you can switch Icy Terrain out of Spell Mastery with then Chill Strike on Spell Mastery. That gives Chill Strike an instant damage area hit, and you shouldn't have much trouble going melee with the enemies, just being able to cast it right next to them or amongst them, and then like Chill Strike, Fireball, Conduit of Ice, and that would be about it. And you want to be doing, of course, your Chilling Cloud to gain the damage, and the third hit on Chilling Cloud will be AoE, which will generally be better than like Scorching Burst, because also every hit of Chilling Cloud will proc like Glowing Flames. So again, it's very important you have Directive Flames plus Combustive Action with that Glowing Flames for your Arcane Singularity, and just trying to get that Arcane Singularity back as often as possible through like the headpiece here, an artifact that might give you action point regen like the Sigil of the Cleric and the Envenomed. And you might even want to skimp on some overloads and use like the corrupted lethal ones instead of having to actually use these ones, which will cost you some resources. So let's move to our power rotation in boss fights. It doesn't matter too much in AoE, we covered that in that section, but here is when you want to do an artifact call. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you get those spell mastery stacks up with Magic Missile. Get it to 5. Then you're using your artifact, like my Dragonfire now, some Chilling Clouds until my artifact's at like 55. Ray, Entangling, Repel, Icy Rays, Mount Power, and Ice Knife, if you have it. And do all that within the 10 seconds of the artifact. So as long as the cooldown shows 50 seconds or more, that's when you want to be doing all the damage. It'll take some practice to optimize that timing. Outside of an artifact call, you ideally want to get that ray down before your other encounter powers, and just, then use them when they're off cooldown. Make sure to try and have those encounter powers back for the next artifact call. And that's about it. Now, there's a trick you can use with Chilling Cloud and Magic Missile, is that you can use the first 2 hits of Chilling, then 1 hit of Magic Missile, to avoid the third hit of Chilling Cloud. That way you don't end up with that long animation. So let's move to our stats. As a DPS, you want to be focusing on these 5 main damage stats. However, you also want to take options that are going to give you boosts to raw damage, like the repulsion ring here, like this armor, and like this headpiece. They're all giving damage bonuses in Underdark. So if you're outside of Underdark, not important you use these, especially the helmet. It's going to have no benefit outside of Underdark, and you would switch to something that would give you crit strike, and then move some things around to give you some extra damage, like not using precision here. You could use armor break here instead, or vulnerability, or dulled senses, or then just accuracy if everybody else has got those things covered. So the order of priority is your power, get that as high as possible. In this build, it is at 90% when we're in a party with the Raptor, plus like a Runic Aura or even a Mystic Aura, and that'll be at 90%. Accuracy will get somewhere just above 70%. Combat advantage will get to 90% with these boots giving us 5%, plus a tutor, which generally a healer or tank will use to give another 5%. Crit strike will get to 90%, combining the 5% from our perfect weapons, 7.5% from our lightning flash, plus 7.5% from precision. We're even a little bit overcapped. If you've got, let's say, a healer or a tank running like Aura of Wrath, or the new armor piece which gives 2%, then you may very well want to switch the precision over. And you might want to do that anyway to increase your team's damage if the other bonuses are not already covered. And finally, our crit severity will go increased by 5% with these weapons as well. Again, if you don't have those weapons, switch Frigid Winds over Critical Burn. You gain another 10% free crit severity there. So we move to our gear. Now the gear we're using is a lot of new stuff. Stuff that can also be very hard to obtain for a lot of you, and I understand that. That's why let's cover some alternatives. So this headpiece coming from Demon Web, Pits, Master. Alternatively, the dashing hat here from the Zen Market, or just run the Serene Hood with the crit strike from Dragonhance. The armor piece from Master Temple of the Spider. If you don't have this, get the Mighty Kuras, again from Dragonhance, just rebalance a bit of combat advantage. Then the arms piece here, again from Demon Web Pits, Master. Again, you could switch over to the Mighty Vambracers from those Dragonhance. Now the weapons here, we've got the perfect ones. If you don't have those yet, you may very well want to be running the Stormforged. Nice and free. You can get those from just doing your North Dark Reaches campaign. Get to 800 and you can craft them right here. Or you can run Mirage weapons like I do in another loadout, because those are currently overperforming. There is no news of when they might get adjusted other than the devs are looking into it. So they might not be something you want to go for on the basis that they might just end up becoming irrelevant when the devs decide to change them. So this build currently has the perfect weapons and it works. The boots are coming again from Master Demon Web Pits, but you could just run the Wasteland Wanderers from your hardcore Vault of Stars mini bosses. Alternatively, you can use the boots again with the seals, 10,000 crit severity, and you can switch then enchantment over to something else instead of the kobolds. Then for our neck and waist set, we have the new masterwork ones, which gives us that alacrity, which gives us accuracy and recharge speed. Pretty nice. And we've chosen the ones with the intelligence here, and thus we gain total of 9 intelligence. Pretty big overall magical damage boost, which is great for us wizards. A cheaper alternative is just the Mythalar set there. You get that Mythalar set, you'll need the artifact to go with it. That one just comes again from doing Dragonbone Veil. You complete that and you get the set. Very nice and cheap. The rings alternatives again would just be running like Illustra's Obligation from Master Temple of the Spider plus Beauty. Those would give you those extra stats and you'd have to fit them into your build. But we are running the rings from Zemnit's Reliquary for the most damage. This gives a set as well, damage against bosses and some combat advantage here. In my multi-target build, I'm switching this ring over to the 6% damage against multiple enemies, and we make up for the combat advantage that we lose by switching off from the other ring just through these companions. We're using the Phase Spider here instead of Minsk for AoE, and the Black Dragon Ironstone instead of your Batiri, since there's no need for those, since they don't affect the majority of the enemies. Then for the shirt and pants, these are the ones from the Dragonhance. Again, if you don't have these boots or have the Wasteland Wanderers, you can switch this over to the Corroded shirt. 5% combat advantage comes from the Dragonbone Veil mini bosses. But this Dragonhunt set is pretty good and gives us the cooldown plus the action points. And there is some new shirt and pants you can get from the Narbondelin zone. You want to be getting the one with the accuracy here and the one with the crit strike. More item level as well with them. So let's move to our modifications and armor kits and jewels. Well, right here, the headpiece we have accuracy, this armor piece crit strike, arms crit strike, boots crit severity. The neck, waist and rings just have combat advantage. That's across all the gear. For our Mirage weapons, of course, we want to be having on the main hand the enhanced Chilling Cloud right there, plus then the offhand having our recharge speed plus our critical strike. So now we move to enchantments. So my setup for these different loadouts is to have 4 cobalts, 2 amethysts, 1 citrine, 1 jade, and 1 garnet. And that way we can optimize our stats just using all of these. You can see again, 4 cobalts, a jade, a citrine, 2 amethysts, and a garnet. The same as all the other loadouts. That way you shouldn't have to spend too much. Just be aware, if you have some other enchantments, you could always make them work. Like if you don't have the cobalts, like I didn't have on my previous builds, just use the boots with the seals. These dragonhide ones, and that'll give you all the crit severity you need. For the overloads, you're generally using Rage of Flames and Devil Precision for everything. However, some bosses have different enemy types. Like the first boss in Demon Web Pits, it's called a demon, so you would use Demon Slayer. The second boss is considered a drow, so you use Drow Slayer. The last boss is considered drow and demon, so you could be using drow or demon, and then just keep Devil's Precision for your stats. Combat enchantment, absolutely lightning flash, 15% stats, very easy to maintain as well, and bonus enchantment recharge speed. However, if you need the movement, make sure to go movement speed. So let's move to our artifacts. Now here you want to be having one that's going to support your team with extra damage. And well, these artifacts actually do that, but only with 7.5%. So if you're in a min-max group, they'll want you to use a 10% artifact instead, or even a 15% one, like Mythalar, or the Dragonbone Blades, or the Demogorgon's Reach. So be prepared and maybe have some of those upgraded. I have a big list here, and these are about like the top 11 you want to be having, the ones you want to be using in a group. So you would use like these top 5 here are usually the best to have. I mean, like Tentacle Rod is 10% versus all the rest of them, so it's not really a big deal using the other ones. It's just these ones have 1200 item level with decent stats, and so you would prefer those over them. However, not going to be the end of the world to just have these high item level ones available to you. But they can be very expensive and very expensive to upgrade. Now, ideally, actually, instead of having the Realm Engine Core, I would have like the Rod of Pain from the Zen Market, but that's freaking expensive. Or I'd have the Eye of Odran, which I never bothered to get. But it's not going to be the end of the world if you just have the 1200 item level ones like the Tentacle Rod, Mythalar, Assassin's Dice, Demogorgon's Reach, especially if you're running mostly scaled content. So let's move to our race and our ability scores. Well, race absolutely would have. Reason is because it's going to give you that 5% to your crit strike, and it's also going to give you a bonus to your intelligence and dexterity. And those ability scores, you can see 1 dexterity there, all intelligence, and then the rest charisma there. And I believe on like my Mirage build, we can just go all intelligence and all charisma. And on my AoE build, we also just have all intelligence and all charisma. That is because we are using critical burn, and we didn't need that tiny boost of crit severity that we gained through having dexterity. And just be aware, if you are leveling up a wizard and progressing through the game and don't have all these best in slot gear pieces, etc., take dexterity before you take charisma. Once your crit severity gets to 90%, like it will when we are fully buffed up and have the 5% from our weapons, then you want to switch over to charisma. So we move to our companions, and this is generally what I'm using in single target. Again, you can see when we switch to AoE that we are switching to like the Black Dragon Ironstone. Again, the alternative from him is Grump from the Battle Pass and the Phase Spider here. And then single target, it's always like Minsk here, the Batiri, the Neverwinter Knight, the Raptor is in all our builds, and the Alchemist. For your summoned companion, I found Pseudo Dragon or like the Green Scale Bowman are generally best just for reliable damage. There'll be some fights where one other companion will do a teeny bit better, but overall it's not going to be a big deal. Like the Cyclops War Drummer in Xemnit's Reliquary can do very well. But then for AoE damage, I personally like to run the Minotaur because he can group up enemies and it'll help you kill them quicker. Our area of effects on our powers is not exactly that big, like Fireball, 15-foot radius, Icy Rain, 15-foot radius, same with Chill Strike when you have that on tab. So yeah, having them grouped up is a massive bonus. But just for raw damage, Yeah, Shadar-kai, Witch, or Regis are going to do the best, but AoE damage not very important, so I wouldn't make it a priority. So we move to our mounts. Here we have our current tab, and for single target, we use our Golden Touch, but you can go ahead and you can use the Giant Toad Tongue Lash from the legendary Giant Toad, or Tunnel Vision from a lot of other mounts. They'll all have that 3000 magnitude. They're also magical, so yeah, you can go benefit from an extra boost to them through your magical damage boost here. For AoE, I like to use the Vortex from the legendary Flying Carpet, or I believe you can also use a very similar power from the Dark Omens Warhorse. It again groups up enemies and then damages them. For our equip power, we're using Pack Tactics if like nobody else is, otherwise it's Ferocity. For our stable, we have this setup. We're using Protector's Camaraderie right now because there's not a lot of other options. We'd be better off having another Warlord Inspiration, but we can't get a 4-slot mount with that other than what we already have. Artificer's Persuasion, there's also no 4-slot mount with it, and this is pretty good. Like, I don't think I would switch to a 4-slot mount instead of it. It helps you get those encounter powers ready for an artifact call to make sure they're off cooldown when you need them. And otherwise, Executioner's Covenant and Mender's Covenant for those extra ratings. You can see the insignias across the board. Is some aggression here, dominance, skill, more dominance and skill. We've also got a few brutalities here and another skill, and some more skill there and another dominance. The colors, the main important ones, is encounter power damage and crit severity. The rest don't matter, but we've gone with movement speed, stamina regen, and rough astral diamond gain. So then for our boons, especially if you're running Demon Web Pits, you want to be picking up the Demonic Mastery and the Cultist Power. Make sure you pick up all these offensive ones here, and then movement speed, and then tier 5, I've gone with Forte and recharge speed. And the Master Boon, take Bloodlust. The rest are pretty terrible. Guild Stronghold, we've got the Power, Defense, and Revive Sickness. I believe for AoE, we have Crit instead of the Power. And for Mirage weapons, we are gone back to the Power. And so lastly, the Consumables. For all 3 loadouts, we are using our Flask of Potency there, our Squash Soup, our Sunlord's Gift Elixir, our Ratatouille, not as important, but it'll get that accuracy rating capped out, and then an Invocation Blessing. Just use them until you get the stat you need. For example, here we need some accuracy here, the book, for our single target loadout, and we get those green ratings that are all maxed out. For our belt items, we've got that Spider Totem, again from the North Dark Reaches and doing Master Temple of the Spider. You could use a Forger's Box instead. We got the Dragonfire. You can use like the Hawk here, or just the Wondrous Doohickey, or the new belt item that's in the Zen Market. And then of course a Stone of Health. And that wraps up this build. These builds, these loadouts for AoE and single target damage. It's what I use in the Demon Web Pits most of the time. Currently I'm just using the Mirage setup plus then the Thaumaturge AoE setup to maximize my damage. Hopefully this is somewhat helpful to you guys on how to set up your build for yourself. There's no need to copy and paste everything. Just go and pick choices that are going to give you the most amount of stats plus then the most amount of damage. And optimize as best you can to balance those stats to get them as high as possible. You should be able to get like 4 of those ratings nice and green. No need to get the power green because you'd be way over the cap on power if you're using a Raptor group, which most people are in endgame content. So a special thank you to all these channel members for their added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.